Am I the a-hole for throwing away old pictures of my husband's ex-girlfriend after realizing he never truly moved on? I honestly feel insane even writing this because part of me still keeps wondering whether I completely overreacted, or whether I finally snapped after years of slowly realizing my marriage was built on someone else's ghost. My husband Daniel and I have been together for almost 7 years and married for 3. From the outside, our relationship looked perfect. We barely fought. We had routines together. Movie nights every Friday, grocery shopping every Sunday. Friends constantly called us the stable couple. And for a long time I believed that too. But there was always one thing in our relationship that never fully disappeared. His ex-girlfriend, Claire. At first, she was just a name from his past. They dated for almost 5 years before she abruptly broke up with him. According to Daniel, it completely destroyed him emotionally at the time, but he always reassured me he had healed long before we met. And honestly, in the beginning, I trusted him. But looking back now, I think the signs were there from the start. The first weird moment happened about a year into our relationship. We were cleaning his apartment together when I found a small photo strip hidden inside a kitchen drawer. It was him and Claire making stupid faces in some photo booth. I laughed and held it up jokingly. The second Daniel saw it, his entire expression changed. He snatched it out of my hand immediately and said, "Don't throw that away." Not casually either, almost panicked. A few seconds later, he laughed awkwardly and tried to play it off like it was nothing, saying, "It's just old memories." I let it go because I didn't want to seem jealous over someone from years ago. But after that, little things started piling up. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and see him scrolling through her social media. Once during a road trip, one of their songs came on and he got so quiet afterward that I actually asked if he was okay. Another time he accidentally called me Claire while half asleep. He apologized immediately and looked horrified with himself, but I swear I cried in the bathroom afterward while he slept because something about it felt too honest to be accidental. Still, I convinced myself I was overthinking. Then 6 months ago, something changed completely. Daniel became emotionally distant in a way I can't fully explain. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't angry. It almost felt worse than that. It felt like he mentally disappeared. Sometimes I'd be talking to him and realize halfway through that he wasn't even listening. He'd just stare into space like he was replaying old memories in his head. He stopped talking about future plans, stopped mentioning kids, stopped talking about buying a house someday. One night, I finally broke down and asked him directly if he still loved me. And instead of instantly reassuring me like I expected, he hesitated. That hesitation genuinely shattered something inside me. Then he quietly said, "I don't know what's wrong with me lately." I remember feeling physically cold hearing that. Because honestly, I would have preferred if he admitted cheating. At least cheating would have meant the problem was happening now. This felt deeper than that. A few weeks later, I came home early from work because I felt sick. Daniel didn't hear me walk into the apartment. And when I entered the living room, he was sitting on the floor surrounded by old photo albums. At first, I thought they were family pictures. They weren't. They were all Claire. Dozens and dozens of pictures. Trips they took together. Birthday dinners. Old selfies. Handwritten notes folded between pages. And Daniel was just sitting there staring at them with this expression I had never seen before. Not nostalgic, heartbroken, like he was mourning someone who died. The second he noticed me, he slammed the album shut so hard it made me jump. I asked him why he still had all of that. At first he looked embarrassed, then defensive, then angry. He said, "They're just memories." But the way he said it felt wrong, like those memories were still alive to him somehow. We fought for hours that night. I told him I felt like I'd spent years competing with someone who wasn't even in his life anymore. And instead of denying it clearly, he kept giving vague answers like, "It's complicated." Complicated. That word haunted me afterward, because what exactly was complicated about loving your wife? After that fight, everything became tense between us. And once I started noticing things, I couldn't stop. He still followed every single one of Claire's social media accounts. He knew where she worked. He knew when she got engaged. He remembered random details about her favorite restaurants, favorite movies, favorite coffee order. Meanwhile, he forgot our anniversary 2 years in a row. At some point, I started feeling like I was living beside someone whose heart had quietly stayed somewhere else the entire time. And honestly, it destroyed my self-esteem. There's something deeply humiliating about realizing your husband loves you, but maybe not as much as he loved someone before you. Then came the moment that completely broke me. Daniel left for a weekend work trip, and while cleaning our storage closet, I found another box hidden behind winter clothes. And this wasn't just a small memory box, it was massive. Inside were hundreds of printed photos of Claire, not normal relationship keepsakes either. There were old love letters tied together with ribbon, movie tickets, birthday cards, dried flowers, a necklace she apparently gave him years ago, even receipts from dates they went on. But the worst part was a notebook hidden at the bottom. I opened it expecting random notes. Instead, it was full of journal entries Daniel wrote after their breakup, pages and pages about Claire, about how she was the love of his life, about how nobody would ever compare to her, about how he regretted not fighting harder for her. And then I saw something that made me feel genuinely sick. Some entries were written after he met me. One literally said, "I wish I could love someone the way I loved her." I think something inside me snapped reading that, because suddenly every insecurity I buried for years felt real. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't imagining things. Part of my husband never moved on. And the worst part? I think deep down, I always knew. I just didn't want to admit it. I ended up sitting on the floor crying for almost an hour before I finally started throwing everything away. The photos, the letters, the gifts, all of it. I wasn't calm either. I was shaking while stuffing years of memories into garbage bags because it felt like I was finally destroying the thing that had been standing between us our entire marriage. When Daniel came home 2 days later, he noticed instantly. I have genuinely never seen a person panic like that before. At first, he thought the box was misplaced. Then he started tearing through closets searching for it. And when I admitted what I did, he went completely pale. Not angry immediately. Devastated. Like someone had died. And honestly, that reaction hurt more than anything. Because in that moment, it felt like losing those memories hurt him more than losing me ever would. Then he looked at me and quietly said, "You had no right." That was it. Not, "I understand why you're hurt." Not, "I'm sorry." Just, "You had no right." Something inside me broke hearing that. We had the worst fight of our entire relationship afterward. I accused him of emotionally staying in another relationship our entire marriage. He accused me of violating his privacy and destroying irreplaceable memories. And then he said something I genuinely don't think I'll ever forget. He said, "You don't understand what it's like to lose someone you thought you'd spend your whole life with." The second those words left his mouth, the room went silent. Because what was I supposed to hear other than, "You were never the person I truly wanted"? He immediately apologized afterward. He claimed he didn't mean it like that. But honestly, I think part of him did. And things got even worse afterward. Because a few weeks later, one of his friends accidentally revealed that Daniel had contacted Claire after our fight. Apparently, they even met up for coffee. When I confronted him about it, he admitted it. And his explanation honestly made me feel sick. He said, "I just needed someone who understood." Not his wife, her, the woman he supposedly moved on from years ago. Since then, our marriage has felt completely broken. Sometimes I catch him staring at the empty shelf where that memory box used to sit. And recently, I noticed he saved a new photo of Claire on his phone. A recent one. Part of me feels guilty for throwing everything away. But another part of me keeps wondering something much worse. What if I wasn't destroying memories? What if I was finally forcing him to confront the fact that part of him never actually left that relationship at all? And honestly, after that conversation, I started noticing things that made me feel even worse. Little things, tiny details that probably sounded harmless on their own, but together they felt unbearable. For example, one night we were watching a movie together when an actress came on screen with the exact same hairstyle Claire used to have. Daniel stared for a second too long, then quietly said, "Claire always wanted to cut her hair like that." Not, "You'd look good like that." Not anything connected to me. Her. Another time, we were at dinner with friends when someone mentioned traveling to Italy. And before I could even answer, Daniel immediately started telling everyone about this amazing little cafe in Florence. At first, I thought he was talking about a family trip or something. Then he casually mentioned, "Claire and I found it by accident." I remember sitting there smiling awkwardly while everyone kept talking, but internally I felt humiliated. Because somehow, even in moments that had nothing to do with her, she still appeared. And the worst part, I genuinely don't think Daniel realized how often he talked about her. That's what made it hurt more. It wasn't intentional. It was automatic. Like she was permanently stitched into the way he remembered happiness. After a while, I became obsessed with comparing myself to someone I had never even met properly. I looked through old tagged photos online, compared our faces, our hair, our bodies. I hated myself for doing it, but I couldn't stop. Claire was effortlessly pretty in this calm, natural way, and suddenly every insecurity I ever had started feeling louder. I started wondering if Daniel secretly compared us too, whether every time he looked at me, some part of him still remembered her. Then one night, things got even worse. Daniel was asleep beside me when his phone lit up. Normally, I never checked his phone, but after everything that had happened, curiosity completely overpowered me, and what I found honestly made my stomach drop. It wasn't cheating, at least not physically, but in his search history were dozens of searches connected to Claire. Her LinkedIn, her Instagram, even her wedding website from when she got engaged. He had searched her name so many times that it autofilled instantly. And then I found something that completely broke me. A hidden folder in his phone gallery. Inside were old photos of them together. Photos I had never seen before. Some looked incredibly intimate, the kind of photos couples take when they're deeply in love and completely convinced they'll grow old together. There was even a video, just 30 seconds long, Claire laughing while Daniel filmed her during some beach vacation years ago. And the way he spoke to her in that video, I don't think he's ever sounded that happy with me. I ended up sitting on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m. crying silently, because I genuinely felt like I had married someone whose heart belonged to another woman. The next morning, I almost confronted him, but I didn't, because deep down, I think I was terrified of hearing the truth out loud. Things became even colder after that. Sometimes I'd catch Daniel staring at me with this guilty expression like he knew exactly what he was doing to me emotionally, but didn't know how to stop. And honestly, that almost made it worse, because it meant he knew. One evening, I finally asked him the question I'd been avoiding for years. I asked, "If Claire asked for you back tomorrow, would you go?" The silence afterward felt endless. Daniel didn't answer immediately, and honestly, that hesitation told me everything. Eventually, he quietly said, "I don't know." I genuinely felt my chest tighten hearing that, because what wife is supposed to recover from that answer? After that, I stopped feeling angry all the time. I mostly just felt numb, like I was slowly realizing my marriage had been built on me hoping someone would eventually choose me completely, and maybe he never did. Then came another moment I can't stop thinking about. A few days after our huge fight about the memory box, I accidentally overheard Daniel talking to his friend on the phone in our kitchen. He didn't know I was home, and I heard him say, "I thought marrying someone else would eventually make me stop loving her." I swear my entire body went cold, because suddenly all my worst fears weren't fears anymore. they were real. I walked out before he saw me because I honestly felt physically sick. That night, I barely spoke to him. And I think he realized I heard something because he kept looking at me nervously the entire evening. But neither of us brought it up. At some point, our relationship stopped feeling like a marriage and started feeling like two exhausted people quietly grieving completely different things. I was grieving the relationship I thought we had, and he was grieving one he never truly let go of. Then about 2 weeks ago, something happened that made everything even more confusing. Daniel came home late from work looking emotionally wrecked. His eyes were red like he'd been crying. I asked what happened. At first he said nothing. Then eventually he admitted he had met Claire again. Apparently the coffee they got after our fight turned into a long conversation about their breakup years ago. And according to him, Claire admitted she regretted leaving him. The second he told me that, I honestly felt like the air got sucked out of the room. Because suddenly I realized something horrifying. This wasn't just nostalgia anymore. This wasn't just old memories. This was two people who maybe still loved each other. And I was the person standing in the middle of it. I asked him directly if he still loved her. And for the first time since all of this started, he cried, actual tears. He sat there with his head in his hands whispering, I don't know what's wrong with me. But honestly, I think we both knew exactly what was wrong. For the last few weeks, we've basically been living like strangers. Sometimes I catch him staring at me like he wants to say something but can't. Other times, I catch him looking completely emotionally checked out. And recently I found out he and Claire still talk occasionally. Not constantly, but enough. Enough to destroy me every time I think about it. Part of me feels guilty for throwing away all those memories, but another part of me keeps wondering something much darker. What if those photos and letters weren't the real problem? What if the real problem is that I married a man who spent 7 years trying to convince himself he had moved on, when he never actually did? Please tell me, am I the a-hole?